There's always something, you know?
It's always the case with pets, yeah.
Well, it's life, you know? There's always something.
So I'm broadcasting from a undisclosed location in upstate New York. And yesterday I was in New York City, and by several of the sites that we talk about, wherefore we have to protect our young people, namely the big guns, military hardware on 57th Street, 58th Street. And it hit home how much work we have to do to protect our young ones and our loved ones.
Well, that's cool. You're in the Big Apple, taking a fight. And how long have you been in America for?
About 7 years.
Okay. That hasn't changed much.
Well, people are even a little more aloof. Well, I wouldn't say aloof. I would say they interact with you as New Yorkers have always done, but they're a little more skeptical of each other. I think that's why it's so important to get out and form, as George Webb has often said, form coffee clubs and get out and talk to people.
I think you're right. I think we have to do some undivisive, is that a word? Indivisible type work of bringing people back together again. And it's a big, long project.
Good morning, Amber. Yes, it is a big project.
Hey, good evening.
Well,
yeah, it's very getting into New York again was eye-opening for me, and all the things that we talk about on this channel started to coalesce. All the different, they all of these entities have a footprint in New York City, and so it increased my resolve to get something done.
Well, I think we need the threat reduction agency, the Citizen Journalist Threat Reduction Agency program going on too to counteract these threats that are. We can turn our language around too. Turn it upside down.
What would be the acronym? What would it be?
IDTR, Independent Threat Reduction.
Yeah. Well, let's think about that. I think that's worth the think there. Get some good initials for it, and it would be a great organization to get going. Because the way anybody reduces stress is to get together, work together, to understand, what's coming at you. And I think that people are starting to understand that things are coming right and left, and why is the question. So once you start to get an inkling by looking at the metadata, then you can come together to fend them off.
Yeah, I think especially the situation in Lahaina and the aftermath of Lahaina is waking a lot of people across the United States and Canada up.
Well, I think a lot of people haven't heard about it yet, even. It just was so much not in the news.
But tell me about Lahaina. I didn't know anything about it.
Lahaina, it happened in Maui. And I have a video yeah, there's a little bit of analysis about how badly the community and why it came to anybody's rescue. So this is one of our threat reductions that we all need to understand, that we're not going to be saved if anything, whether it's weather or something else or, so many other things. The agencies are there to help us. Something has changed, and it's worth a discussion, I think. So let's listen to this short video.
Hours of police body cam video obtained through open records requests.
We wanted a first-hand account directly from first responders as they became aware of the scope of the disaster. Our Allison Blair has more on what the recordings reveal. The video is time-stamped and offers a precise timeline. It shows the severity of the fire and the fact that people were trapped and had died was repeatedly communicated by first responders to dispatch within the first 2 hours of the afternoon firefight. It makes claims made by Maui County Mayor Richard Dixon, and emergency management leaders said they were unaware what was happening, even more perplexing. A warning, some viewers may find this story disturbing. August 8, 2023 at 3:14 p.m. Body camera video shows Maui police on the scene of a small spot fire burning behind the West Valley Hall in the area of Komarov Street. On the other side of the home, another much larger blaze is raging. The fire is booking it towards the bypass. Then at 3:18, a radio call from another location alerted dispatch to a road closure.
We gotta shut down the road up to Lahaina.
It's not hitting yet. Firefighters control of that scene. The officers race to their next call as multiple wildfires spread to Lahaina.
Visibility right at the overpass of the bypass. Well,
By 3:26, the gravity of the situation was setting in.
evacuate below Lahaina with a fire jump to the highway.
While traffic
Gotta go, you blocking shit. Okay.
At 3:41, radio traffic indicates the wind whip blaze was barely. Small spot fire burning behind the West Maui home in the area of Komarov Street.
I hear fire trucks.
On the other side of the home, another much larger blaze is raging.
That fire is poking it towards the bypass.
Then at 3:18, a radio call from another location alerting dispatch to a road closure.
Shut down the road up to Lahaina.
As firefighters took control of that scene, the officers raced to their next call as multiple wildfires spread through Lahaina.
Visibility right at overpass of the bypass is about 5 feet. How is this? This house on fire. What do you think on fire? Everybody's got to evacuate. Evacuate now.
By 3:26, the gravity of the situation was setting in.
Morning. Good. Self.
Let's take it slow, bro. Take it slow. Oh, house on fire. Bro, we gotta get all these cars down low because the fire is right next to the.
Meanwhile, traffic was in gridlock,
Why are the cars not moving?
and the public had begun to panic.
You gotta go. You gotta go. You're blocking shit. Okay.
At 3:41, radio traffic indicates the wind with blaze was barreling towards Front Street,
The smoke is coming right now. With the fire behind it.
and people were unable to escape.
There's people trapped up there with a house not burning right now, so we're worried about them and their lives right now. Everything is out of standstill. Front Street's out of standstill.
By 4:10, road congestion had rapidly worsened.
All power lines are down north of the station on highway.
We're aware. Nothing we can do. Please contact officials. They're doing the best they can.
A half hour later, at 4:37, more injuries started pouring in. And they didn't stop. At 5:05 p.m., an officer desperately trying to direct people away from Lahaina town went car to car with this dire message.
Okay, this town is on fire. We have multiple red lights.
The fire's right down the road. You can see them all over for traffic down Front Street. On fire all the way down. Market Street. On fire.
It's all information that's related to officials working in the county's emergency operations center, a place Clyde Kolokai is familiar with. The former NPD assistant chief retired last year after serving nearly 3 decades on the force. Picture the EOC. Tell me what it's like.
Well, you have the police radio going on, so you can hear firsthand what's going on in the field with our officers. You're there with the heads of every agency, so you can hear what's going on with the fire department, with the medics.
But the evening of the disaster, Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson said this on the 6 o'clock news.
I'm happy to report that the road is open to and from Lahaina.
Seemingly oblivious to the horror unfolding on the west side of the island. All this while first responders repeatedly crossed fire lines to pull countless people to safety.
Come on.
Is there any reason why someone in the EOC wouldn't know what's happening in the field?
No, there should not be any reason.
We heard multiple times that people who were supposed to have been in the EOC, they weren't sure what was happening. How's that possible?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
That is pretty disturbing. You know, I'm very glad you showed that body camera. You put it to Carol.
I think there was a little bit more, because what it goes on to say at the interview with the police chief? I didn't catch exactly who he was, but he had had a lot of experience as being a safety officer for many years. And he was explaining how what people were experiencing and the way it was supposed to be set up, it was impossible to have had that bad of communication. You know, that something was seriously wrong with how the roads were blocked, people couldn't get out, you know, and the people at the state level had no idea what was going on at all. to mobilize anything else. So there was, communication was just not working in that disaster. And the interview I saw of Acapulco, it was really similar thing too, that, nobody had any warning at all that this was happening. When the guy who I saw the interview tried to warn his friends that lived in Acapulco, they had heard nothing. The communication was broken down. So I have
Extremely sad, so sad.
Well, it's sad, but Amber, you alerted me to this Ericsson thing. And what both Acapulco and Maui are smart cities. They weren't C40 cities, but they're smart cities. So were they targeted? Is there something going on that's coordinated about the emergency response? Because you pointed out that Ericsson now owns a non-local version of 911. That the calls aren't directly going to where they need to go. And
Okay, yeah, so to break it down really easy, they have the technological power to actually, let's say there's an emergency happening in your city, and all of a sudden everyone starts calling. They can actually redirect phone calls from 911 to like local pubs, or just put it on hold, where your city has no idea what's going on in an area. So that having that ability is so dangerous for anybody, and there's no reason for them to have the ability. It's the same thing that if you have voting machines and you have the capability to actually go into the machine afterwards and change a vote. Why is there that on the square? Like that should never be allowed into
either. It's a block. It's they can do huge block changes on
Yeah, well but just the fact that they made their software to where someone could go in and adjudicate it and change it by pulling up a ballot image and then just changing it. Like, you shouldn't make software like that. That is just supposed to be one person, one vote. There shouldn't be that capability. And that in itself is sketchy.
Well, you alerted me to this Ericsson situation, and I also found another 5-minute video that's about the secret family owning Europe. It's about the Ericssons and how they got their wealth to the communication monopoly and many other things, banking, all sorts of stuff. And then instead of what usually happens in families that have a lot of wealth is like the third generation is sort of the curse where people mess up and the families lose their wealth. But what they've done, and I can see this idea spread to all the other CEO oligarchs that we know, how they all quit, 2 years before this happened and started foundations en masse. So that's exactly what Ericsson did earlier on. They put all their money into foundations, and then they let their family members run the foundation. So this is a cool little 5-minute thing on just the background of Ericsson, and we can kind of see where maybe some of this stuff.
Oh, you have a clip to play? That's awesome.
Yeah. Can you do that, John? Can you play that? Okay.
Battles for so long, and most important, to the still hold sway over the continent's political, economic,
Can you start it at the beginning? It's not, or maybe that's the case.
Politicians, the public picture, and the media frenzy lies a hidden realm of power of one European family. But who are they? How did they amass such an extraordinary wealth? And why have they managed to remain in the shadows for so long? And most important, do they still hold sway over the continent's political, economic, and cultural landscape even today? Deep within the heart of Europe, a dynasty of immense power and influence reigns supreme. This family tree stretches its branches wide, encompassing bankers, industrialists, politicians, bureaucrats, diplomats, and military officials. Their control extends far and wide, owning not only corporations like AstraZeneca, but also holding a significant stake in the NASDAQ stock exchange. It's even been whispered that they possess over a third of Sweden's entire stock exchange. With a vast web of companies employing over 1 million people, including nearly half of Sweden's industrial workforce, their empire stands at an astonishing $275 billion, surpassing the likes of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and even Bernard Arnault.
But how did the family achieve such immense power while evading public scrutiny? The answer lies in their careful orchestration of secrecy, rarely making public appearances but granting interviews. After all, revealing their true wealth could spark envy and provoke antitrust discussions, a risk they are unwilling to take. It's time to uncover the truth and meet the family that allegedly owns all of Europe, the Wallenberg. So let's journey back to the year 1837, when a young naval officer from Sweden named Andre Oscar Wallenberg found himself in the midst of a catastrophic American financial crisis. Inspired by the shortcomings of American banks, he envisioned a better banking system for his homeland, Sweden. At that time, Swedish banks were outdated, making it difficult to transfer money and providing meager interest rates. More importantly, they failed to lend money to burgeoning companies during Sweden set out to establish a modern SEB. Unlike any other banks in Sweden, SEB encouraged everyday individuals to deposit their hard-earned money into savings accounts. These accounts offered attractive interest rates, incentivizing the masses to flock to SEB. Little did they know that their deposits weren't being kept safe in some grand vault. No, the Wallenbergs had a different plan in mind. They lent this money to other businesses and individuals during Sweden's industrialization boom. This groundbreaking approach propelled SEB to unprecedented popularity, eventually dominating Sweden's entire banking industry. But the Wallenberg didn't stop there. The family embarked on a buying spree, acquiring majority stakes in hundreds of Swedish companies. From railways and factories to international trade and LLCs, no major enterprise in Sweden escaped their grasp. They controlled 40% of the country's stock exchange, leaving no major company untouched. Yet the Wallenbergs faced a significant hurdle during World War II. They had to make a choice, profit from the Allies or align themselves with Hitler. The Wallenbergs played both sides. One brother dealt with the Allies, offering banking services to support their war efforts, while another stationed himself in Berlin. There, they bought crucial German military supply chains, protecting them from seizure or closure by the Allies. The Wallenbergs' ability to play both sides of the war proved highly profitable. Their success continued for over 50 years, with the family consistently using similar tactics to maintain their wealth and influence. They engaged in questionable practices, such as running black market operations and money laundering to secure their financial interests. However, as the curse of the generational wealth loomed, the Wallenbergs devised a strategy to protect their fortune. Instead of passing down the entirety of their wealth to one or two heirs, they created numerous family-run foundations. Each heir would be entrusted with managing different foundations and businesses within the vast Wallenberg empire, preventing any single individual from endangering the family fortune.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I'm not exactly sure why they're singling out the Wallenbergs here, but they were certainly powerful. And what I think exposing the Americans, especially the New York, Boston, Philadelphia corridor, their ties to these families, and how a lot of Americans' families are also in on it.
Well, yes, and moving on into the future, they acquired Ericsson, which is a telephone company, and it worked with Nokia that made all the phones, but they did the networks, and the networks evolved. They bought a bunch of ones from all over the world, including the U.S. So they bought Telecordia, and Telecordia is the baby bells. It's all the baby bells. So they purchased that in 2012, and they called it Support Solutions. And that's where they got into all this networking stuff, taking business networks and government networks and putting them all together. And now it's called Interconnected. I think that is. They upgraded the name a little bit. And so Ericsson is all of this, plus Warburg Pincus, the regional bell company bought it in 2022, which is more private networks for retail, healthcare, whole lot of stuff, but you can see that how giant, and then the foundations go hand in hand, and that then that lesson has been taught to the top Silicon Valley guys, for sure. They've all made their foundations, and so they still control that. But the telecom stuff is the big deal, really, how huge they are. It's global networking for big businesses and governments and with the 911 stuff. So that's where it ties in with what's going on and why are the communications so messed up. You know, what's happening? How can that be? Those are good questions to keep asking.
Hey, Tara.
Just get her away.
I think she has a bad connection.
Yeah, she's even in it.
At one point she was trying to talk, but there's a problem with the audio. However, so hopefully soon.
My connection keeps getting kicked around too. It's crazy. It's the Wallenbergs.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you look into what's behind all this stuff, you know, it's not easy to see, but it's coming out more and more. You know, I found that video pretty easily, and it goes more on into the more current times, like I was talking about too. But the other thing that the Wallenbergs had talked about, it was like the company store. It was like the old coal mining company in Pennsylvania that we looked at Lindbergh. They had, you know, the big company was there, but they controlled everything, and they kept all the people kind of, they brought them all over from Germany, but from different parts of Germany and different ethnic and churches, and they kept them so they couldn't communicate with each other, and they couldn't all get together and like unionize or anything. So that was, that's exactly what happened in Sweden, and it became the whole country became more socialist because one family owned so much of everything. And that's kind of the idea of the one world government, it seems like.
Yeah, basically they gave themselves permission to overhaul not only their respective countries, but all of Europe and a good chunk of the rest of the world, because they know better. And I got a good dose of this when I first moved to Italy. When we are the ruling class, we know better. We know what to do for you little people that are, you know, less educated and you're too busy going to sporting events and doing other things. You really don't study this stuff. You need us to lead you to a better world.
What I find interesting these days, especially with research and trying to figure out who the puppet masters are, it seems like everywhere I work where people are talking about, no, this is the puppet master, no, this is the puppet master. It really, there's a large contingency of the upper echelon that do, you know, plenty in order to take away our rights and have an unfair layout of the system in which they dogmatically oversee everything and guilt others into thinking that they're wrong for wanting to know what's going on or for asking pertinent questions that protects their family. And so the more I see this come out, it's not just a handful of people, and it's not just one country, and it's just one culture. It's literally so many different countries and peoples that want dominion over other countries and peoples. So it's like, if you point over here and say it's this group, there's like 5 people at that point attacking them to take over the control that they lost earlier from that group who just gained it. And so to me, it seems more like I'm just running into a lot of people who research. I'm not talking about this group, I'm talking about just out in the research world and trying to figure out, you know, what is going on, where it just depends on if you like a certain religion, you're not going to look at anybody that's part of that religion that might be doing something wrong. If you like a certain political leaning, you're not going to be looking at anybody on that political leaning to see if they're doing something wrong. If you like a particular culture, you're not going to look into that culture. And I think that's where we all fail, is because we have our biases of what our favorite people or groups are. And so therefore we overlook their hand in the cookie jar in order to point to the one we've always had a feeling about and we just know it's them, not knowing that some of it is passed down ancestrally and that the fears that we have about particular people have to do with our ancestors that fought those people, or that are those people are different than us, or they have a different characteristic than what we're used to, so therefore they must be the boogeyman. And I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I think there's a lot of push and pull and tug and a lot of power struggles going on. And it's hard to dictate or denote who is the bad guy and boogeyman when everyone's, clamoring for the same rope to tug it to get the gold at the end of the rope, right? And I think that's where the difficulty is trying to find which one inevitably actually put the rope out there, put the gold at the end and told all the other ones to tug it is actually the one or couple that we're looking for, because everyone else is reactionary because they want control due to fear, power, land, resources. But I do believe there's a trigger point of a person who does put that rope, hides the gold, and then tells everybody to grab a piece of rope and start to pull. I think for me, that's what I'm always looking for. And I think it's deeply spiritual and dark as well as just the very small, tiny group of people. And it's kind of like the heiress thing of the golden apple, where she walks into a room and all of these women are clamoring to be the favorite, and she doesn't feel like competing. So, and she was not invited to a party. And so she came in with a golden apple and threw it and said, whoever gets the golden apple first is the most beautiful. And she watched them all clamor and fall to the ground, and they all looked like fools, and they lost all their friends, and they lost all of their clout. And I think that's what we have going on here, are the people who were questioned that run things, when we all saw through the veil of like, what's going on? Why is there so much devastation? Who's doing this? Was AIDS purposeful? Who's like laying this out? Why is this happening? They decided to throw in some golden apples everywhere, and then all of those who would like to take control and take their place are going after the golden apples, and now we're looking at all the reputations and we're mocking them and laughing at them and saying, oh my God, look what you're doing. But they only went after the apple because it was done in the center and they were promised beautiful things. And I think that was done on purpose in order to tell us just be happy with the shit show we had to begin with, and don't complain. And just take what you had before it got so complicated with everybody else, or else we'll throw in more golden apples for more people to step up and make chaos as well.
Well, I think some of the way this is being accomplished is through kind of the fear. I think, one of our other people we work with who works with a police department and as a consultant about some of these emergency things. And, he was going to help set that up locally. And then they got a different, all of a sudden, some big something swooped in and said, no, let us do it. Because, and the arguments, I looked up Telecordia, who's a big company that came out of the Baby Bells, that is really owned by Ericsson. And they're frightening all the little local companies with the compliance regulations. So there's new complicated regulatory compliance. So just go with us and we'll sort it all out for you. Is the way that
they do that every time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's what's happening with elections too. All the elections have all their own regulations, and so these big companies are saying, "Oh, we can do it with AI. we can figure it all out." But meanwhile, they're using servers in Kosovo or China or whatever to actually say what the results were, but may or may not what the results were locally. So when the regulations get complicated, it's easy for those big solutions to be sold to them.
Well, a lot of times what I'm seeing here in Georgia is that the people on the ground floor are getting the message that the reason things are so screwed up is because we just didn't elect the right people to the right positions, or one person gets elected he migrates to a position in which he's no longer efficient, there is no bad actors at the top directing everything. And it's starting, but it's not really catching up. The waking up to, oh yeah, it's not just about incompetence. It's about the influence. For example, the True the Vote trial, Verified versus True the Vote trial in Gainesville. It wasn't held in downtown Atlanta. It was held in Gainesville, which is 45 miles out, for a good reason. They really want people to understand, to believe that the government works, the process works, but you just have to vote harder.
And vote for more things. I noticed that when I was poking around in the BlackRock website, and it was making a big deal. Hi, Tara, you made it.
I'm like, is Mercury retrograde or something? Because I have like all these, whatever. Dave's phone is the one that's
Mine kept cutting out as well. It's ridiculous.
Hey, Amber, good to see you. Hey, John.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I saw that Lahaina stuff like came in just for a few minutes, and it's like, oh, it's like you can't even wrap your emotions around it. It's so, horrifying beyond what you can, it's like sci-fi or something.
Yeah, it is, and I think Acapulco was really similar to that. But you might have missed the second one. I mean, the video really talked about why the communications, or how the communications went wrong, and how systems that had been put in place that would have stopped, that would have helped people instead of stopped them from getting out. The communications was all muddled up, and the person who had been in charge of emergencies previously for decades and had just retired, I guess, just couldn't possibly wrap his head around how bad the communications were locally, county-wise, and statewide. The people were not getting the messages. It just wasn't happening, and all the systems that had been put in place weren't there. So we were talking about Ericsson and the Wallenbergs and how they own all the 911 systems and a lot of the communication networks that puts all this together, and how and why that has happened, and is it really a good idea? Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Don't trust central communications. Like, we need parallel that too, It's like, but just, that's where the preppers kind of come up to that, where it's just like, you're not going around your normal life thinking like, oh, we're about to get attacked, basically, my friend, he says that he always, like, when he goes into a room or place or whatever, he always looks around to see what can be used as a weapon. And I'm like, most people don't think like that anyway. But
And you don't want to have.
No, we don't. And especially something like that. How can you even compete with something like that? It's like you just have to, I don't know. It's like there's some kind of angelic quality. It's like for that many people to just like have to leave so dramatically all at once like that. You know what I mean? There's some kind of larger than earthly component to that. Even though the earthly ones that are responsible, we're not letting them off the hook by any means. But like you said, it relates to other places. So it's just like comes down to like who has this technology, who is, get the psychopaths out of these positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad that we keep hearing it's only a few people, because it doesn't seem like it sometimes, but that does make it easier to wrap our head around. And like Dr. Shiva said, how can such a small number of these, they employ these same old tricks, these same old tricks, and here we are again.
Once you know what people are vulnerable to and what motivates people to behave particular ways or to have, you know, if I say this group of people will do this, and when this group of people will do this, it'll anger this group of people. Like, this is how I look at it. They say, we'll keep it shut down, and that'll allow us to be able to lower the population because if we want to be shut away. But then they had to deal with Americans who were like, no, we want to open up, we want to open up. And then they thought, okay, well, now we need to say that this virus hurts the Black community more than anybody. And so they know that that's a lot of the teachers in the big cities that they want to keep shut down. They know that's the post office workers, the DMV, the government offices, the trash collecting, the teachers, that they know that this is going to cause a large contingency of those that would be required to go back to work to say, I'm not going back to work. They want to kill me. And then they knew that once that calmed down, they only had a little bit of time for that anger to be festered in the Black community where they believed that someone was out to kill all of them. And then they introduced George Floyd. And then all it took was to say, we've got to push back, they're trying to kill all of us. And then they were able to frame it that it was Trump trying to do it. And then you had the continuation of the Charlottesville, where Trump was like, no, we're not going to come down heavy-handed on BLM because everyone's calling me a racist because of Charlottesville, and that wasn't me. And so then he throws it back in the laps of the governors and say, if you want the National Guard, then, let me know. And so then he let it get out of control a little more than he should have because they were pushing so hard to try to cause him to stop it so they could say, see, he's racist. So no matter what he did, they were going to look for a way to frame it. And so when you lay things out in a particular way, then you know this is what will cause. It'll cause this with this group, this group, this group. And so they're really good at understanding reactions and how they can motivate people through their emotions. And then it's reaffirmed through things that they promote for movies or television or music that just got released, or a news story that has you distracted and you're passionate about something else, as well as just having dysfunction in your schools, perversion, and violence every night, where you're hearing about some other crime happening, and then a legal system that doesn't work, and, you're hearing horrendous things where murderers are let out without bond. I mean, this was a way to actually cause so much destabilization and hurt everyone's pocketbook when they had to take off work from the pandemic, that once they had to get started, they literally just had to work, because if they didn't just focus on work, then they were going to go broke and they were going to lose everything. So if they got involved or tried to see what was going on or push back against the government, they weren't at work and they weren't earning money, right? And so they knew exactly how to lay it out, just like a chessboard. It's kind of like someone who says, I'm going to just move this one pawn, and they already know their next 18 moves because they know the person across from them. And so that person just thinks that they're playing per move, right? Oh, and so that's what we were, reactionary. We dealt with each move. Oh, it's the pandemic. Now let's research and see what happened. And then by the time we're doing that, oh, there's riots. Now let's research and see why there's riots. And so we can only take it one thing at a time because we're not the chess master that laid out the board. We're just forced onto the board. And so I decided a while back, I'm not going to be a pawn. I'm not going to go on the board. I'm not even going to get near the board. I'm going to watch the people playing chess. And then I'm going to try to let the people know who only know one move ahead. I'm going to try to remind them that the person who laid out the game and who offered the invitation to play it and who built the board and who laid out the pieces and invited you to the game is a few steps ahead of you. So you need to stop just looking at the one step. So, it's a very difficult process, but I think, if anything, I would say the one positive that comes out of it is it's caused people who are complacent in their critical thinking to start critical thinking. Now, some people broke down and they just went silent and they decided they're just not going to think anymore because it was too difficult and it's too much and there's too much stress. But some people, it made them a much better critical thinker.
Well, I think I have a great example that just happened today, actually, and I think this is a good example kind of a self-organizing collective. We have all these
car thefts in the city, millions of them way more than we used to. And my daughter noticed in front of the house that there was a car parked weird right blocking the alley. And first she got all mad and was going to have it towed away. And then she went over and looked at it, and it had a baby seat in the back, and 2 windows were smashed. And she thought, well, maybe it's a stolen car, and I should report it. And then I remembered this article about a couple of months ago, maybe longer ago, about this guy that was real upset about all the cars being stolen. And he had a Facebook page and that had a lot of people from something else. So he organized it as this full citywide sleuths that connect stolen cars with the people that lost them instead of having to be towed away. And he is now so successful that when you call the police, they'll send you to him and he'll put it out on Facebook. And it really took probably an hour to find the right person. The police came. It had to kind of go through all of the regular systems, but it didn't get towed away. They could come and get it. And it was just cool. There's this great big organization of thousands of people that do that. And they do it for bicycles and they do it for cars.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
See, that I think that's the difficult thing is getting everyone near you motivated. But in order for the motivation to happen, you have to feel the police have to be in it. You have to feel alone. You have to go through great travesty. You have to see many deaths. You have to see that it's Mad Max, and then all of a sudden people go, "We have to do something." And that's so sad that it takes. Like in Portland went through all kinds of crazy. Like they were the main character of the crazy time of the riots, and so it's kind of like they figured out this will help, and it caused them to actually do something.
I think I explained way earlier, a couple of years ago, how all the neighbors in my neighborhood had a big meeting at the schoolyard, and all told stories of all the horrible things that were going on, and that the police were not coming anymore. And you can have a guy with an axe in your backyard, looking in your basement windows, hearing an axe. And my neighbor called and said, this is happening. And the police just, at that point, just repeated over and over. It's not illegal to carry an axe, in someone's window. And they said we're not, they just kind of repeated the same thing monotone over and over. And it was like, whoa. But the police have since become more responsive. There is more local police. That's changed. So I'm happy.
Yeah, they were. Well, I after what I saw, Portland people doing to the police, I don't blame them for saying you're on your own, because those videos were and like something happened in Minnesota, but like they acted like it did, and it was like, wait a minute, guys, like your police are the most active police out of everybody in the United States. What the hell is happening?
It was wacky. But they tried to do the defund the police, but the police really were pretty much neighbors of police, so people didn't go for that.
Yeah.
They brought it back.
Like
What is this? Why did we all go mentally ill for a while?
Right. Well, Atlanta has really progressive police, and over black. On top of that, 12% are either married to or dating someone in the black community. And there were white girls in yoga pants from like the suburbs of Georgia in their face calling black police officers racist. I was like, what the hell is wrong with you, you stupid bimbo? Like, take your yoga pants and go and do some meditation, because you're a whack job. What is wrong with you? And then same with Portland. I'm like, how much more passive do they need that police force? And then they're like firebombing them. Remember when they were like making shields and just trying to break into police and burning them down? I was like, what is going on?
That was all organized by people that were on probation, it turned out.
Yeah. By who?
People that were on probation.
Oh, good God.
Well, there's parallel things going on. It's like anybody that was watching that whole, let's just call it 2020 right now, like, they don't even know that those things were happening. You know what I mean? It's like, Amber, when you talk about there being kind of like these compartments that are lanes that people just don't see, they're other channels. It's like, I still think there's a lot of people that don't realize what was actually happening. Okay, maybe they heard something about George Floyd and somebody thought was a sign, but it's like the literal ridiculousness of, you know, summer of love, as George would say. It's just, and another thing that goes along with it is just these layers of like breaking down society, you know, and the powers that be, whatever, they did hope that things would get so that people couldn't function because it got so unraveled and bad and stuff like that. And to me, I honestly think that that's what Operation Warp Speed was actually about.
Yeah.
I know that it was framed
Oh, thank you.
to be like, let's hurry up and get a vaccine, and a lot of people,
you.
rightfully are pissed off about that. But I think that the Warp Speed actually was more kind of along the lines of like Amber was saying, okay, this one step, but then they have like a bunch of these other steps. And I think the Warp Speed was like, okay, evil ones, you're gonna do step 1 through 20 right now, all at the same time. Just cram it together. Yeah, because we are not letting you play us out in a period of time where it ruins us.
Yeah, well, you make them actually speed up so that then they reveal themselves and it makes it more obvious to others rather than the slow churn that inevitably happens and nobody notices it, like a boiling frog. It's like they threw you in a pit, and then there was a fire area, and you could either walk towards it or walk away from it. So like it became so overtly obvious.
Well, you know, we recovered a little bit from some of those first things, but to have the fires were terrifying, and they didn't sweep through the whole city. But to imagine that kind of tragedy and have all the people that are supposed to help organize and make things better just doing the wrong things, not even just not communicating, but actually doing the wrong things, blocking the wrong roads. So both people couldn't get out. That is really terrifying. I think that's for protecting the nest. We need a good strategy for that kind of action.
Absolutely.
Well, even people who believe that the police are just incompetent, and people who believe that there's actual evil being done, they all need to see how the Wallenbergs and the Hochschilds and the rest of these, and mostly European guys, are actually behind it all, dividing us up. That's why, in the case of Atlanta, I would invite some of the people, some of our best researchers to come give a conference and teach policemen and teachers and you name them how they are being manipulated, and getting into what Amber said before about the emotion, how George Floyd actually went down, and why George Floyd, I think, was actually directed out of Vienna. So we have to be able to make people, they talk all the time, power elite to power elite. You have to make them see concretely how their particular profession is being manipulated.
Mm-hmm. And how we have to just demand on local control. That will solve the problem. I mean, we do know how to self-organize. We do know how to solve problems. But the tricks to make people believe that they're not good at that they're idiots, that they're greedy and selfish, and it's all our fault that everything's falling apart. That's an important myth to break. We have to bust that one because people. We're gonna
solve the problem.
Well, one thing that I would like to suggest to the audience is to read the book The Nightingale. And you can even make it easier, get it on Audible. The reason why that book is so good is it's seen from the perspective of the citizen, the person, the people that went through the war, whether it's the German soldier or the French soldier or the revolutionary or the person who had to witness great atrocities, or the political prisoners or the shop owners or those who worked for the government and transitioned well, and those who rebelled against. But it's from the view of not the country or the military prowess or like the leadership or the president. I think de Gaulle is mentioned once. And besides that, all you hear is the Americans, the French, the German. Like you hear the people on the street, like all the bus, like people, just regular people, and their trivials and people falling in love, people losing a loved one, people, raising a child in that, people starving, people, trying to find ways to put flyers out, to make a connection, to have an underground system in which to fight back. I mean, it's such a great perspective to remember that we may see it from a mainstream media news bite. We might see it like, oh, the Azerbaijan is now attacking Armenia again. But when you look into it and Armenia is Christian, and you have all these Christian leaders everywhere saying, oh, we care, and yet they allow for Christians in Armenia to get slaughtered. I mean, there's an issue there, all because the airspace over Azerbaijan makes some countries happy. They're okay with the fact that Azerbaijan is being very aggressive towards Armenia because it benefits their airspace. So although we don't hear of like the travails, the death, the problem, those things exist, and all because those are the it goes through our eyes into our conscience, and it's like when it says, "Oh, God knows everything you're doing. If you steal, if you lie," that's because when you're doing it, your brain is processing what you're doing, whether you're stealing or lying, and so that's recorded in time. It's seen through your eyes. It's something that you did. It's something that you witnessed. Therefore, you're held responsible if with those people who say, "Okay, it's karma," or "It's just justice," or "It's how you choose to live, and it comes back to you." Whatever the case, these stories that are out there that show the perspective of regular people, we have to remember that how we were created and what created us sees these smaller things, doesn't see things on this bigger perspective of what the mainstream media says, but what is in each one of our hearts as we go through trials, tribulations, and travails. So just if you guys have the time to at least listen to it on Audible by Kristen Hanna, the Nightingale. It is so important to understand just the regular human facing atrocities because of a power struggle from those that say that they're there to protect them, to represent them, and to make their country strong. I mean, because we can't really forget about those people, because that collectively determines how our future it lays out. It determines future generations, how kids, either they're full of fear, confidence, either they're creative or they're destructive. I mean, it lays out their future, their health, how they see the world, what they add into it, and we can't lose sight of that. And that's a book that will help you remember to keep your feet solidly grounded, so that you're actually connected to everyone, because the ground is magnetic, and you need that energy, and it keeps that connection with the everyday person, everyday people, and we can't lose that connection. It's the most important one of all.
I agree totally.
Yep, that is important, and that's the attempt to lose it is what you're seeing, what we're watching is stay in your houses, don't come out, the world is too scary.
Don't take initiative. Do not take.
Don't do anything. You're too stupid. Just do that.
It's too complicated for you to understand. Don't read those medical papers. You won't understand them.
Well, I feel like one of the things that I was thinking about earlier about, people like President Trump, George, George Webb, all you guys, just a bunch of different people, and it's just striving, like being human. So obviously giving yourself a chance to not be perfect and figure things out. But just those people remind me that in this life you can be really great. You can really, not perfect, and not even just whatever you want, but just greatness itself to be like, you know, Aaron, for example, he's someone who is just, he can accomplish so much because his mind is able to like imagine so many possibilities. And so I really feel like the time that we're living in is, there's so much fast moving information and things we're involved in and feelings and all this stuff. And like the deep dives are so exciting. The feeling, the complexity can be really grand, but sometimes when you're just searching for what the answer is, the simpleness is kind of connects things in such a bigger way that you tap into just a little bit of it. It's, like electricity. You tap into a little bit of it, and that's enough to spark everything that you need. And so when you were talking about, or you guys were talking about some of the evil ones, and it's kind of like they do put out a magnet because that's their like trick, but Amber, you said right after I was thinking that us all together in our real like heartbeat on the planet, that's the magnetism of like God, the collective, like love, what we really are. And when it's all together, the force of that is like they're not moving us like mountains.
Right, and I always have to remember the practicality of being there for other people, but then at the same time understanding that sometimes we as citizens and we as people, we make demands of our government, like why isn't this food clean, and why is our phone technology not as good as this country, and why are our cars not really running, or why is our Ford and Chevy having struggles, but my Toyota is really great. Like those are the issues that we have to be careful of, because people do put a lot of stress on their leadership and on their country by demanding of goods and services and the newest and best and brightest thing. And and we're all pretty guilty of wanting that, extra, nicety, that new kind of blower that doesn't make noise so Carol can do her show without hearing a leaf blower. Like we all want those things. And with that comes the need for resources, which then needs to come what country gets there first, who manufactures it, who gets the good deal, who doesn't, who's able to benefit from it, who's able to own the patent. So we have to understand that our demands and our needs for bigger government are more. Make sure that we are in a government that will be pushing for power and doing things that may or may not hurt other countries in order to be on the top, like climbing that proverbial ladder to get the next ship for the next car for the next technology. So I think that's the difficult balance that we have, is because we do want that really nice cotton blouse, and we don't want chemicals on it, but we also are going to have to do a lot of things to make sure that doesn't happen. So, I mean, I don't think we're all growing cotton. We're going out and we're making our own T-shirts. It's become so difficult to like go back to the olden days to know how it was done by hand, that we're kind of at the mercy of the people that we're very critical of, and rightly so, but we should be critical, but we also have to understand the role we play and the pressures that we put, which gives them the excuse to blame us because it's our fault that we wanted a better rug or we wanted a better flooring substance, and they had to use this element from this country where they got these kids to mine it because they were the only ones who could fit in the mine, and now we have sustainable floors rather than reusing or using up all the trees and the old wood, and so it's this weird balance of a demand but also a need for justice. And sometimes when everyone's demanding things, some people that don't get it, there's a lot of or get beat out of it, there's a lot of injustice that happens to them in the fight for victory and in the fight for might and the fight for the resources that will be contained within that thing that everyone's making the demand of. So, like, there's an equal responsibility here, and I try to remind myself of that every day.
Well, having enough, is a good concept to ponder. That we have everything we need for each moment, right now, right here. That's sort of a yogic concept, but it really does help calm you down from that, oh no, we won't have enough kind of thought.
Yes,
You have
definitely.
enough to get through for the next while, so you don't have to be grasping or greedy, and if that's, it's kind of it's a spiritual concept, really, to be able to feel like you have enough.
I think it's also a spiritual test for all of us. And
Yeah,
and I think we're supposed to hold our leaders responsible and hold their feet to the carpet, because they said, hey, I'll be a good leader. And then we're like, we'll see about that. But
Yeah,
yeah, you can,
and that's enough for you. You don't
Right.
need to spend military.
right, but we have to understand, when we do hold their feet to the carpet, they're going to feel justified with holding our feet to the carpet. And so there will be that tit for tat, even though we didn't sign up for leadership, because then we are judging leadership, or we are being accusatory or, declarative about their lack of, or they're not as good as we thought they'd be. And human nature, they're going to say, well, look what you want and look what you're desiring. So we're setting ourselves up to be mocked. So that's why, like, every day I have to remind myself, like, what can I do from scratch? What can I do that asks the government the least of the government? Like, what can I do? Like, when we built our kids' clubhouse, we used all recycled wood. There are things that we try to do, but then every day I'm reminded, holy crap, like, to run this country and to run a lot of the top tier countries, they're having to do things that none of us want to see, hear, or talk about in order for us to get those products. And so we might need to reevaluate these things, because these are the balance. I don't want everybody living in grass huts, and I also don't want to take away things from people and go, we got to be hermits and nomads now, but also there's a responsibility and there is a balance there that we do have to step up and actually, own up to ourselves.
Yeah. I think taking responsibility is a really important thing.
Well, I couldn't find it before the show, but there was a guy in Joplin, Oklahoma, who lost everything in a tornado. And we have to remember, especially Americans, have to remember that to keep the Hegelian dialectic going between the West and the Soviet Union, they had to convince everyone, you need a bigger car, you need a bigger house, you need all these toys. And it's been ingrained after 4 generations now. You have to have all these things for a minimum of happiness. And so the great challenge for Americans who are waking up is to go back to basics and figure out what do you really, really need.
And on the bigger scale too, it's also like not what the individual needs, but in industry, what is really surplus or ridiculousness, and what really is necessary for like high functioning, you know what I mean? Because there, as we know, the tricks that are put in are completely wasteful and insane, like, oh, let's drive this a couple times around the globe just so that we can stop and pay these other people and blah blah whatever. You know what I mean? It's like things that don't make sense. Or like, oh, add petroleum to everything because like Standard Oil has this thing going where they want to change medicine and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So
And they're trying to get rid of all the waste products.
that's what I mean. So it's like those are tricks instead of being like, oh, we got to figure out how to function this. It's like there's whole parts of it that are like parasites that just need to be like completely removed from the system.
Absolutely agree.
And then we can function better because then when you really lay out the actual functions of things and then try to solve it, layer it right up, and then you're like, oh, this is gonna work great.
Do we have like an outgoing clip or any happy clip or, to get the weekend started, or Anything to inspire?
Let me think. I'm slightly unprepared, but definitely feeling inspired. Not with a clip. I definitely will say, I think we got some moving and shaking going, and I think that everyone just needs to keep on the positive, keep praying, because that is, our deepest connection to the Great Spirit, to the heavens, to Source, to God. That's where we're at right now, and we do, our heartbeats do beat all together. We have a very special rhythm that we all share, and I believe in, us, the trees, the plants, the animals, the water, the air, and all the vibrations, and everybody just have a beautiful, beautiful weekend until we see you next. But no clip for me.
I'm gonna put
Carol, you're on mute.
I'm gonna put in the description box a link to the dancing goat, the dancing baby goats. That is very uplifting, and I know there are other ones about dancing little kids.
Can you play it?
I'm looking for it right now, but if I don't find it, I will put it in the description box. It's so cute.
I did put one that we played a while ago. I did find called Another One Bites the Dust, and it has all the rocket ships behind it. But it's a fun dance. Yeah,
Hey, do you have that one to play?
I put it in the chat. There's a lot of echo.
Oh, you are?
Okay, I found it.
Okay.
Here we go. This is priceless. Oh, come on. Tube. All right, here we go. Share screen.
1, 2. Oh, the goats.
This will give you the energy to fight the deep state. All right, everybody, have a great weekend.
I loved it.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.